there's something different that clicks when you're like, maybe I could just have fun and just meet people. Nothing has increased my revenue more than spending time with people. And I want people to get a little bit of the sense of like the philosophy and what is the way of being? Like, how do you move through the world?
Great.
You're starting to see some things you haven't quite seen before. And you only get to do this beginning part once, like you only get to do this beginning once. And this is life. It is happening right now.
It feels like almost just hallelujah, like, wow.
It's kind of ridiculous. I'm still in that. I'm like, is this real? Let's have fun. Like, let's support each other and let's have fun.
Hey everyone, welcome to True Self, the True Self Accelerator and the True Self Accelerator podcast. The True Self Accelerator is a place for healers, coaches, creatives, and solopreneurs to get profound inspiration, as well as practical advice for launching and expanding your offerings. In this show, we explore key questions. What are you intrinsically motivated to do? How can you start doing those things right now? And how can you get paid while you do them? Connect with people who are discovering where their life's purpose meets financial prosperity. If this work speaks to you, click the link below this episode to join our free empowerment group, a weekly Zoom session with live Q&A and opportunities to meet the community and share what's working. With that said, let's dive into this episode. Nick Shrewsbury here to talk about how to be an unprosperous coach.
Yeah, and also how to make this as hard as possible.
And how to make this as hard as possible.
Like a total soul-sucking grind that leaves you like gasping in the dust in the wreckage of your broken dreams and tears.
And on that note, Nick, welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah. Dive in. Let us know. What's the story? Who are you? Where are you coming from?
Okay. Yeah. So the reason that I want this episode to be called The Un-Prosperous Coach is in part because we're going to be talking about a methodology called the Prosperous Coach, but also like a lot of my years have been, especially when I started my coaching practice, unprosperous. I spent a lot of time sitting in front of a computer being like, what do I do? I should be pressing buttons. I should be making things, like, what do I need to do? Do I need to write a book? I should be creating content, but also, I should have a podcast. I mean, what is content even really? Like, is it a newsletter? Is it a workshop? Is it speaking? I see people speaking. It's so easy to get swept up in all these things, like putting all these things in the way of having a client. Yeah. And I mean, just, I guess for context, I came to this work because I wanted to facilitate transformation and possibility. I just love being in spaces where that's present in the case. And I wanted to deepen in that in myself. And I wanted to support it in the world. That was the passion. And then I got started in this and I felt like, oh, I have to do this thing called marketing. And that was stressful. And I don't want to knock marketing at all in this conversation as we go. More, I'm just wanting to set the stage of let's just look at what would it be like if this got way easier. Let's just look from that frame and see, what if the process of creating clients was something that got way easier and was more and more and more a process of you growing in your connection to your own wisdom and intuition and your capacity to create bold impact for people when you come across them. And the shift for me, like the thing that has increased my revenue by far more than anything else, is this both methodology and philosophy, I'd say, of there's a book called The Prosperous Coach, and I've trained with some of the folks who work with that method. And and I'm just excited to dig into that today and look at, okay, how do we make this much easier?
So good. And I would just love to hear, like, what's the backstory of coaching? Like, who were you trying to reach out to? What was that initial kind of client base you were speaking to?
Yeah, that's a great question and a good place to start. So in the beginning, I did relationship coaching. And the core of that was, I would say, healing codependency would be the psychological word for it. Yet in like more human speak, it was just like, I was working with folks. This was my own experience, right? Like this is what I had grown through. And so I was like, okay, I have something to offer here. I was working with folks who felt like they held back their voice in relationships, felt like they didn't want to rock the boat. Relationships like started off great and then became this experience of I've held back like my big juicy desires or my pain, my sadness, my frustration. And I just kept tucking things away until I feel like I'm carrying around this bag of secrets that's super heavy and I'm wearing a mask in my connections and it's exhausting. And I just avoid conflict all the time. And so I was working with people about, okay, how can intimacy become electric and enlivening over the long term by really radically transforming the way that you approach connection and clearing out a lot of the unconscious patterns and beliefs that you have about what connection needs to look like. Yet a thing I think that would be valuable to name in that is I thought in the beginning that I needed a niche. A niche. Yeah. Yeah. You know about niches. And while I do, so I'm going to be talking today from the prosperous coach frame. Right. And so I think there's a lot of different perspectives out there that have value from this frame. Niches are valuable if you're doing a workshop, if you're offering some experience, it's like, this is for accountants in Florida who, are in like, yeah, it's just like, we're getting really specific so that people can say, oh, that's me. I that would have value for me. But it's when actually coaching people, like my focus has broadened a whole lot from like, I focus on that like psychographic of relational healing in that very particular way. Now, when I have a conversation with people, I just talk to them about like, what are your dreams? Like what's not working in your life right now? And what would you love? And what's in the way? And like, that's a gap conversation. There's a lot of different people who hold that space. But it really radically transforms the way we are being with people when we're no longer saying, oh, I only work with this one specific set of things. And instead we work with possibilities and dreams, and we clear out the fear and the problems and the things that get in the way. And we tailor it really specifically to the person. Yeah. So today I would say I work with anybody who's who's having fear and doubt and shame and worry and old habits get in the way of the kind of life that they want to be living. And there's a lot of different ways that can look.
Can I dig in? Like in my processing, I would, I make a distinction between niches that are based on a demographic versus niches that are based on a psychographic. Yeah. For example, hey, I work with the real estate agents in Florida, which is more of like a physical, like there's a characteristic about those people. They're in a place, they're working in a job, versus people who are in more of a psychographic transformation. Hey, they're, they have a dream, they're stuck there. Is that also a niche? Or just curious what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that is true. Maybe I think the distinction that maybe is useful is I think it's great to drill down to a specific person if I'm looking at creating a workshop or an experience. But if I'm looking at just having a conversation with a human being, my orientation is so much more towards them, like what is here, what is hard, what would be amazing. And how can I help you to experience a shift in that?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's like this really macro niche of the human experience or something,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think there's something to that as well so one of the guys who created the prosperous coaching method, his name is Steve Chandler. He's really the main guy who created it. And I was at a workshop he was teaching and he was like, the thing for coaches to see is that a frame to come from is that you have water, and there are a lot of thirsty people in the world. And so we can get all caught up with like, in that example, what that means is like, everybody wants their life to get easier. Everybody wants things to feel better and to create beautiful shit, you know? And like that, like, what if you just had this glass of water that people drank it and their life got easier?
Yeah.
Like, would you be worried about like walking around? Yeah, cheers. Would you be worried about walking around saying like, "Ooh, I don't know if I can give you this water"? Like, you know, you just go to somebody and be like, "Hey, do you want some of this water?" Like, everything gets better. I feel like I'm talking about drugs right now, but like, it's like, it's just like, here, have some water. Like, you're thirsty, you know, like, would you like some water? And if somebody was like, "No, I'm good," you know, it wouldn't be like, "Oh my God, I have to go retreat," you know, for days.
Yeah.
That's really cutting. It's just like, oh, okay, you're not thirsty. I'm sure somebody else is, you know?
So I think what I'm hearing in what you're sharing is the fundamental difference is that you are approaching clients, you're networking. I don't know what the word is there, but you're finding people to work with who are in your immediate vicinity, within your social networks, like in-person social networks. You meet them at a house party, you meet them at the gym, you meet them. It's like, you're not needing a niche because your niche is just the people that you happenstance interact with in your life, versus more internet marketing, getting on social media and wanting to get a specific message to a specific subsect of the billion people on Instagram.
Yes, that is true. And I think a nuance I want to add to it is, and let's definitely, I think, like, we're talking broadly right now, which I think is valuable. And I want people to get a little bit of the sense of like the philosophy and what is the way of being, like, how do you move through the world
Great.
in this way? And then let's get tangible afterwards, just so folks know we're going to do that. So just, there's a mutual friend of ours, Kevin, told me this story recently. He was talking, there was a study done where folks came into a room and they were going to be photographing this man. And before they go into the room, they get some information about the man. And for one photographer, they were like, "This man's an alcoholic. Heads up." And for others, they were like, "This man's a really high-powered CEO." And for others, they were like, "This man's an incredible father." And then the different photographers go in and they're getting their angles, they're shooting things. And then you see their photos and you see the alcoholic.
Wow.
Right. Like, you see the CEO, you see the, this incredible father. And that like, what we see informs how we move through the world. And so if you're moving through the world thinking clients are this mythical unicorn and there's all this stuff I got to do to be able to have one, then there's going to be a lot of stuff you have to do to be able to have one, versus like, if you move through the world and just recognize that like everybody wants their life to be easier and you can support them with that, it becomes really different. And I've had people get on my calendar from cafes. I just randomly talk to them. I've had people get on my calendar from, I went to an art gallery and just chatted with a person there. I also, a lot of the things I lead a lot of just workshops that are fun for me. I just lead events that I'm like, this is fun. Like, I'm going to do a flash pillow fight. That's like in Boulder. I'm going to announce it a day before. And I'm just going to say, "Hey, everybody, flash pillow fight, 3:07 PM, bring a pillow," and like, we'll see what happens. But I think there's something different that clicks when you're like, maybe I could just have fun and just meet people. And there is skill in how do I walk somebody down a path? Like, once I actually meet them, how do I walk them down a path of becoming a client? Because there's a journey there, and there's an enrollment journey that's really important. And that's where the skill is really. Yet, if we're talking about just like the philosophy and way of being, it really is that. It's just meeting human beings, and we could talk tangible about that, but just the way that we see the world really influences how we move through it.
That sounds so much more fun than trying to craft like the perfect online offer and run YouTube ads. And
it's so beautiful. And I'm both feet into this at this point, and it's working really well. And I'm at this phase. I'm like, whoa, can it actually be this easy? Is that possible? Like, how easy can this be? Like, I'm also just I take a lot of time just to rest and walk in the forest and not work, and like,
yeah.
And go ahead.
It feels very spontaneous. I think that's what I'm saying about like, there's I've done a lot of marketing campaigns for, bigger businesses, and it's like very strategic, very thought through. There's boardrooms and there's whiteboards, and, how do we position this? What's the future? And I see the results too, right? Like clearly that works. It's an approach. There's a methodology to it. And it sounds like, I just feel this kind of carefree, lighthearted, playful, spontaneous, like I'm going to do a pillow fight, and then I'm going to maybe meet some clients, and then I'm going to go hiking.
Yeah, totally. And I think there is like okay, maybe it's helpful to talk now about, like we could talk about, okay, how does that happen? Let's say a pillow fight is thrown. A pillow fight happens in a wood.
You're at the pillow fight in the woods.
Yeah.
What's next?
You're at the pillow fight. Yeah. And like, I mean, honestly, pillow fight, we'll see if it's really a client creation thing or it's just fun. But in theory, like, let's say it's some event, right? And you're just having a conversation with a person. You just ask them about their life. I'm going to be like ridiculously simple right now. You just ask them about their life and you get curious. And when you notice something that they're like is hard, or they're kind of flinching around, it's just like, oh wow, what is that? Just like really ask them about what's going on in their life. And just demonstrate to them that you're connecting, like you're there. And so a really important part of this prosperous coaching framework, and one that is very polarizing, is that you give a lot of your time. So by giving time, I mean like you just gift a lot of sessions. You gift a lot of conversations, really. Like there's a client I'm working with right now. We had 5 one-hour conversations over the course of a year. And this is a great human. I really respect and appreciate her. She was just moving with a lot. And I was just following my intuition with her. And when we first started talking, it was really helpful for her. We talked a bit about having a coaching container. And when we started talking about it, it was just really clear. She's like, I can't do that right now. Like for various reasons. Like some of it was financial. Some of it was just like, it just wasn't right, basically. And I could have just been like, oh, okay, I did my discovery session. We're done. And instead it's like, no, this is a relationship. And I just stayed in touch with her. I was just like, Anne, how is it? How are things? And probably about 6 months later, she was like, oh my gosh, so much is happening. And I was like, tell me about it. And as quickly it was like, okay, let's get on the phone and talk about this. And then we had another few conversations that was just like deepening this, coaching experience for her. And then came to the point where she was like, wow, I really need to do this. Let's go. And I think a thing that I want to, and not everybody's like that. Sometimes you talk to somebody for a first conversation. It's like, okay, let's do it. Are we doing it or are we not? And that I think is really where the skill comes in here, is like, how do you walk people down an incredible experience of enrollment? And how do you serve them in a way that's far different from anything they've experienced before? Yeah. And there's a real giving of time, and that it really is no strings attached. It's like, come in, we talk for that long. And if she had said, I'm not doing it, it's like, okay, great. Like nothing has increased my revenue more than spending time with people. Nothing has increased my revenue more than spending real time with people and getting really good and actually having a ton of fun in serving people without strings attached. And just like, come in, let's have a conversation. I'm going to change your life. That's the context I'm holding it with. No matter you walk away, you stay with it, your life's going to be different. And the better I get at that, the more this world is just filled with abundance, because people come in and then they're like, well, what was that?
Yeah. As I'm hearing you talk, I'm thinking about kind of, I don't know if like SoundCloud, the music platform, right? Like, and they had this model where they ran, just a free service for like 10 years, and they had, millions and millions of users, and, and tons of people who are uploading music, like doing the whole thing. And, later there's this conversation about monetizing, now they have subscriptions, and, you can pay some money to them.
Yeah.
And yeah, just kind of this, I don't know, I'm seeing some kind of parallel to that kind of long game approach towards a tech startup, which is let's just get a bunch of early adopters on the platform, loving it, interacting with it, like let it become a way of life. And then later, let's talk about money. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if that's like at all a relevant metaphor for how a coach could move through the world, just starting a bunch of coaching relationships, like building those dynamics, having, 10, 20 people that you're in that regular conversation with who aren't paying you. And then let a second chapter of that be where you're starting to actually have income from those sources.
Yeah. I guess there's both like the micro and the macro. So like the micro version is, I don't know if that's the right metaphor, but so for me right now, I give a lot of time up front for people, which feels so good. It feels so good. It feels great for me because I would rather do that than create social media content. I have so much more fun just creating wildly impactful shit for people that's in person. That's just great for me. That fits great. And if they don't, maybe they'll refer me, who knows? But like, yeah, magic is created. So there's a giving of time, and I don't even worry. I'm going to get to your question. I don't even worry. Like in a first conversation, I'm like, we're not even going to get to money and logistics. We're just going to get to like, what's deeply here for you. And if somebody, I'll tell somebody my fees if they want to know them, but generally I'm like, honestly, we're not even there yet. I don't know if it's a fit to work together. That's why we're here. It's usually second conversation for me, if not third. And that just creates a container of such power and ridiculousness that people, it's just like, I think people are like, how do you charge high fees? Like, how does that work? And the answer is, for me, you spend time with people so that they're like, oh, this is what this is. Because people don't know what coaching is. And when you try to explain it to them, they're like, you're just selling me something. It's a rare person right now who walks around the world going, I need a coach. It's growing. It is growing, but people don't know. Yeah. And so to your question though, about like starting out for free, I think yes, like it's funny. I have a lot of clients right now who are like, how do I do this? How do I become a coach? And my current answer is like, apprentice with me, but also, just the best thing you can do is just get started working with somebody, hold some transformational space, even if it's for a friend, even if you trade off, or you just like, hey, I want to do this thing called coaching. I want to just be practicing this lifestyle. how about we just hop on the phone for an hour every week, and I'll support you in your dreams. And I'll also support you with what's feeling challenging, and just how do I grow this skill and see if it's something that fits for me. And that kind of work is valuable. And in the beginning, my first client came from like, I did pro bono 6 sessions with her. I was like getting coaching hours, and like, and then she was like, I just want to keep doing this,
Yeah. So Nick, dive into that, just the process of creating that skill set, right? I mean, I could imagine that most people wouldn't be able to change somebody's life on the phone in an hour.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Let's do a couple things here. Yeah. Okay. That's a good question. How to change somebody's life in an hour. The first thing I'll say is like, that sounds really daunting. So I want people listening to that not to be like, oh my God, I have to do that. Yeah. I mean, honestly, like really genuinely, when I first get on the reason why I like taking time with people also is because the first conversation, I'm like, it doesn't matter. The things I want to establish in that conversation are I'm a reasonably trustworthy human being that you like, hopefully, or not like that I need to be liked. It's more just like that this experience feels good for you. And you're starting to see some things you haven't quite seen before. And the way to make an enrollment conversation really impactful is first of all to support people to look at what they really, really want. What's there? And I will like, I forget which teacher I learned this from, but you can do like once you get out some of their big dreams and goals and desires, it's like, okay, we've got some things here. How enlivening is this for you on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being these are just some words, and 10 being this is deeply inspiring. If somebody is an 8 or higher, we're missing something.
If they're not,
either we're missing something or they're just not there.
Mm-hmm.
And some folks like that, that's a good litmus test for coaching, is like, can you tune into things that really enliven you? And you're like, I want to go for this. This is important, Yeah. And as long as we have that, then that's great. The thing I want to just like, instead of, I think the frame of like, how do I change somebody's life in an hour sounds awful and stressful. So I don't want anybody, and that's not the way that I'm holding this when I'm getting with somebody. So I'm just like, we like talked about it, and I just want to like gently like let that like fade away right now. Yeah. You can just like exhale it out. What we're here for in having a conversation with somebody, what I want to like direct people's attention to, if they're like, how do I have a more impactful conversation with somebody? The first thing that I want you to look at, or just attune to, you listener, is that you have some spidey senses. You have some wisdom. And when you're talking to a person, there's things you're picking up on. And you're hearing them talk about their dreams, and you're seeing them like grit their teeth, or you're just picking up on the ways that it's like, this seems like it's getting in the way. Like something here. What is that? Just give that real credence. Like, you've got some spidey senses. There's a reason you want to be a coach. Listen to them. And be bold. Be bold in saying them. Like, the way to increase your enrollment power is just to take the risk of saying the thing that nobody else would say to this person. Like, it's not a friend conversation.
Do you have an example? What's just hypothetical? What's a thing that you've said or you might say to somebody that nobody else would say to them?
Yeah. Okay. I'll just feel that for a second. Okay, I've done I've done a lot of impromptu breakup coaching on like enrollment conversations. That was genuine. Like I was talking with people and they're just like, this isn't working. I don't want to be in this relationship. I don't want this. It's not working. You know, they just say that in 5 different ways. And then like there was a guy I was talking to and I make sure like I'm going to talk pretty forcefully right now. And that's actually like me being forceful is a real sweet spot because I tend to be so nurturing and warm and like this container's got, you know, all of you, any part, you know, like, which is true. And I can be very gentle. That's my default. And so for me, it's a great sweet spot for me to just be really bold and decisive and like cutting. And so for this guy, like there was a degree of like pining for a person that just like wasn't giving him the time of day. And so we just spent some time with that. And we were like, you know, how real is this? You know, like this it seems vaporous, right? It's like, what are you seeing in this person? You know, and who are they to you really? We just gently played with that for a bit. And he just came to this place. He's like, yeah, it's not real. And I was like, dude, you got to cut this fucking shit out. Enough. If there's one thing I can say to you, like that would be if this call were to be the most useful thing that I can think of right now, there's so much joy and so much potential for you. This has to stop. You know, like this has to stop. There's so much more for you. And he just cried and he was like, oh my God, I have to do it. Right. And I think that's the challenge. That's the way to challenge is like to challenge within the frame of you have so much capacity and so much to give and so much to do. Enough of this.
Wow. Yeah. I feel that potency. I'm thinking of a coach who I met who, you know, I have a lot of background around attachment styles, and I met this other attachment coach, and he's just he's this guy, you know, he's from Louisiana or something, and he just gets on the phone and he's just like, just get over it. You know, he just has this very, and it blew my mind talking to him. I was like, wow, your approach is different. But I guess, you know, he helps a lot of people, and there's just a different part of us that lights up when we get that kind of, maybe it's father energy versus mother energy or, you know, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I'm noticing, I mean, to artfully challenge somebody is a real skill. And we learn it by seeing other people do it. And then kind of feeling into it and playing with it. I'm wanting to acknowledge, I mean, our first goal is to do no harm. And I think I'm just wanting to acknowledge, I'm like, I'm running back. I'm noticing my worry arising around like, cause I think there's 2 things here. One is like a challenge like that is so valuable. And there's a good amount of checking it out that happens before that. You know, it's like, okay, are we really on the same page? Is this true? Is what I'm seeing true? This is what I'm seeing. Tell me if this resonates for you. Just like, there's a good amount of just like, okay, are we with it? And then like, as long as the person's like, yeah, I'm just, that's real, you know, then it's like, sometimes a really just direct challenge can be really great. And I'm not saying like, you don't have to challenge that intensely on a call. And it's rare that I do that. It's rare. It can be much gentler than that. It doesn't have to be so intense. It can just be like, it sounds like it's time.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's time. Like enough of this.
Skillfully done. So
Nick,
okay. I'm hearing, you're getting down to the core. Like, what is your 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10? I love that. That's just, such a powerful frame. You know, are you ready to be coached? You know, are you hungry enough for this transformation to happen? And then I'm hearing like an exploration, you know, getting into a place of common understanding. You know, you, Nick, understand where they're at. You're kind of validating, checking like, hey, I'm getting this sense. Is that true? Then, this potential for, you know, the kind of the hard nudges when needed, you know, done skillfully. what else is there? What else is there in the coaching methodology? Like, how do you show up for people? What is what's really the power, the value behind your interactions with people?
Yeah. Tell me if I'm right on something like that. The question, I'm curious if this is true. So I hear a question behind that of like, how can a coach grow in this way? Like beautifully.
Great. Love it.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe. So, all right. So we've talked about just this philosophy of, okay, what is it like to be in the world and have water that you can give to people? And there's a lot of nuance in this of, oh, how do I actually invite somebody into a conversation? How do I, and then there's nuance of how do I hold that conversation? How do I walk people along a journey? How do I have good impact where people also feel safe and they feel seen? I mean, the most important thing is they feel safe and they feel seen.
Yeah, you offered that question back, and I think my question on the deepest level is like, really, like, what is coaching? Really, what is it? Is it?
I don't know.
Is it showing new possibilities? Is it like kind of a form of hand holding? I don't know how to say that in like the most positive, supportive way. Like just like, hey, I'm here with you. We're in this. Accountability.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different perspectives on what coaching is. I can say what it is for me is there's a powerful simplicity of people just connecting. People have an innate wisdom in them, and that can be covered over by lots of fear or stress, worry, doubt, etc. Yet, in my experience, everybody has that. And it makes life so much easier. And so a significant part of coaching is, how do I just live with that more often?
Your superpower, like your innate wisdom.
Yeah. And I suppose it's one of those things, like I can describe it with words. It's just like, but the work of coaching is, how do I give somebody a felt experience of that? There's a significant energy of like, how can I step outside of and or heal a lot of the cyclical thoughts, emotions that are running through me? Not in a bypassing way, but in a genuinely, like, those things can settle and calm. And then there's much deeper clarity in my life. Things get easier. Things feel safer. Like, by safety, I mean, like, I feel a sense of ground and ease in my body. I'm more tuned into what enlivens and inspires me. I have a capacity to lean in through fear to create what really matters. And there is a spiritual component to that for me. That there's a degree of coming home. And once we do that, our capacity to create a remarkable life with incredible connection and deeply beautiful passions just becomes more and more and more online. That is, I suppose, what I would say coaching is. But how does that happen? I think that's what coaching is, and there's different ways for that to happen. There's a lot of schools of thought.
Great. Yeah. Hey, so I'm tuning into this question, which is just, I want to just give you, right now you're on the mic, you're on the camera. I just want to give you the spotlight. Like, what's really most alive for you to share? Like, talking to our audience, talking to people who are, out here trying to figure out, like, how can I really take my gifts to the next level? How can I step into coaching, step into healing, step into, I kind of have this like life purpose theme I work with a lot. Yeah, I would really just love to, you've clearly had experiences, you've clearly had, struggles, triumphs, the peaks and valleys, the whole thing. Like, what's most there for you? Advice for others, lessons harvested from your journey?
Yeah. So the things that have most drastically helped me, um, apprenticeship model, working with somebody who I'm like, you have skills that I want. That is such a fast way to learn. It's such a fast way to learn. Because you absorb it by osmosis, and you're not just picking up like the techniques, you're just feeling how they hold it. And that is so valuable. So learn from a coach that you love, and honestly pay money that scares you. If you want to charge high fees, and it's not just like high fees. There's a whole conversation to be had about that, about like, I think like ethics and like, how does it work? And there's a lot of things we probably won't get into in this moment, but I think if you want to charge high fees that feel good for you and also feel good for the people you're charging them for, which is entirely possible, pay some money that scares you to a coach that you really love. Like that really shifted things for me, because it just does something different inside of you. You're like, I'm worth this. I do this for myself. And then you start to see why it's worth it. Putting up that level of energy for something is a real paradigm shifter. Yeah, so that is one. Another is just spend time in communities of coaches that you enjoy. And if you don't know where those are, find them, create them. Like, just be spending time with people who get it and who are like, oh, yes, I see you. I see you. We're community animals. Connection's important. Yeah. And I think, yeah, those are some important ones. Another is, I want to take a stand. If like this is the one thing I leave people with, I want to take a stand for people having fun. And I want to acknowledge that it's a really big thing to start a coaching business, at any business. It just asks us to face so much of our shadows, so much of our unconscious habits. And that's a really courageous thing. And so I think just folks listening to this, I really acknowledge you for leaning into that, because of the passion that you have for whatever words you use: transformation, beauty, magic. It's such a valuable gift to the world, and I want to make this easier for you. And you only get to do this beginning part once, like you only get to do this beginning once, and this is life. It is happening right now. And it can be fun, like you just have to learn how to make it that way. And a part of that is being willing for that to be the case and exploring things that really resonate with you. And if this approach resonates with you, just like, I don't know, Matt, let's put some resources in the show notes or something of like places people can go.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know through our conversations, Nick and I have, just been kind of riffing on this theme of fun, easy, lighthearted. I really would love to just hear, like, tell me your thoughts, grind culture, the kind of the mainstream approach to this, and then this new way of being that you've learned. There's a whole world there. And I think it's so important, we all kind of are immersed in the world of like chugging coffee and, just hitting the books every day. And yeah, it seems like it's so core to who you are to have this just totally different approach to it.
Yeah. Grind culture. Yeah. I mean, let's just acknowledge that we get so much training in this culture to grind really hard. And we also get a lot of shame. We get handed a lot of shame of like, that gets all wrapped up with, I'm not good enough. I haven't done it right. Yeah. And so the moment that we start looking at, I'm going to create a new thing that's kind of vulnerable and risky, we're going to hit those energies. And I think maybe it's important just to acknowledge that that is an option. It is not a requirement. It is not a requirement to move through the world that way or to create a business that way. And I'm like, it's fun to say that because I'm like just on the other side of that. I'm like just on the other side of the river looking back being like, oh my God, this can be easy. And then I'm just like, this could be easier. How deep does this rabbit hole go? I don't know. Yeah. And so
do you think does it take an element of grind to kind of kickstart the engine?
Definitely. Yeah. So this is a good question. Like, I don't want to say certainly, hard effort is valuable and great. I think more what's here, maybe two things. One is we can invest like extra energy, like we can, I think it's valuable to cruise through the day at like 70% energy. And like there are times where you might hit 100%, but most of the time, like we don't need to be operating at like fully. And I think there's a lot of people that move through the world at 120%. And a 50% of that is like fear, stress, worry. It's just like this cycling, what's the next problem? What's the next problem? Without solving anything, it's just like, where's the problem? Where's the problem? Where's the problem? And when we're in that energy, we're going to find problems, So I think part of it is like, how do we step outside of that way of being? And part of it is also, it is valuable to have a strategy, an approach that works and feels good. That is helpful. And learning from people who have figured some things out is helpful. So I think both of those things combined is like, okay, that's how things get easier. And this is a fun profession because we get to our own study for our business also so much benefits our life, like we can get coaching that's around our business, but it's also, or around our life. And it just all becomes immediately applicable. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel really just kind of blown away, speaking with you. Of course, I've had so many conversations with different people, different walks of life, especially the kind of high strung corporate types, like very, very familiar with that field. And yeah, just speaking with you, speaking with some of the other coaches I know who are, walking around this prosperous coach method, walking around just like this kind of different way of being in the world. It feels like almost just hallelujah, like, wow.
It's kind of ridiculous. I'm still in that. I'm like, is this real? And I think I also I want to acknowledge, if anybody's listening who's like, is this snake oil? Like, I really honor your skepticism and I would encourage testing over trusting. Like just check this out a bit and, talk to some folks who are doing this and have had some success with it. And just see what it's like to dip your toe in. Because I'm still having that experience. I'm like, is it this easy? I think maybe it's helpful just tangibly. Like most of my clients come either from referrals or I just create workshop experiences that are fun. Like I just created one called the Fear Lab and I just ran it 2 nights ago. It's just like, let's just play with fear. What would happen if we were playing with fear? And that sounds fun to me, let's see. And then after those workshops, I have the emails of people and they've had a cool experience with me. And I've found ways to just that was a little bootstrappy. I just in the beginning, I reached out to meetup organizers and email listservs that seemed right. And I would just post these events and run them virtually and could get, 5 to 10 people in. Sometimes I would have one and that's fine. It just becomes an enrollment conversation then that's personalized to them. And afterwards, I just send people an email. It's just like, hey, so glad you joined. I offer folks who come to these workshops a slot on my calendar if you'd like it. And that's a time where we can look at your dreams and take what we looked at in the workshop deeper or look at something else. That would take us an hour. Would you like to do that? Nick. And then some people want to. And then we go further.
Yeah.
And it is literally not more complex than that.
Right. A question I just keep running up against when I'm thinking about the prosperous coach, I'm speaking to different people who've just benefited so much from that methodology. I keep asking, how much is it hand in hand with the actual offer of coaching? And is this also like, could lawyers move through the world in this way? Is there an underlying principle that is bigger than coaching, or is it actually kind of baked into the cake of here's what the offer is for coaches? So because it is so relational and so widely applicable, that you're able to then move in this much more relaxed way through the world.
Yeah, it's a good question. I certainly think it's directly relevant for like therapist, healer, body worker. Those things can come online. And yes, I've seen lawyers who work with this. I've seen like music teachers. I've seen folks from different stripes who use this and apply it.
People helping people. Is that the common thread?
Yeah, I suppose so. Like service oriented industry. Yeah. And I guess, or maybe like consulting in general, like advice, like information that feels useful, or experiences that, yeah. And I guess, I mean, I'm trying to think of like how to make that more
applicable.
Like what are the applicable things?
I would love to almost pick your brain. Like, what is, in real time, could we write the book, Prosperous Body Worker? If you're a massage therapist, like, could we take these principles and apply it there? I mean, are you going to offer 5 hours of free body work? Like, probably not, right? And just trying to understand, like, how can people who aren't doing exactly what you're doing take some lessons from this and apply it to their practices?
It's a great question. The first thing that arises is, I don't know. And let's see what else comes up. I can certainly say, I do think a thing that's helpful, like for folks who are trying to get out of the session to session model, is like, I offer you a session and then, we just go where we go. And for some folks that works great. It's just like, it just flows and it's perfect. And if it appeals to you to step into more of a package orientation where you're kind of sketching out with somebody, oh, okay, this is an arc of time. And this is what we're looking to create together in this time. This is the dream. This is what would be amazing. And in that, like, charging a higher fee that's upfront, and also like being able to like validate is a word that's coming to mind, or like have a good reason for a high fee, because people aren't you're stepping outside of being paid by the hour, and you're stepping into, this person is paying for their dreams. They're investing in their dreams, which we didn't talk about that, but that's part of the way we hold the context of an enrollment conversation, is like, you're not paying me for like my hour of coaching. You're paying for this dream. Like, this is what's important. We're in the context of that. Like, keeping people in the context of that is really valuable. And if I were to start body work tomorrow, doing pure body work, I probably would play with, let's look at a package. Let's look at what this journey is. And in that time, come just meet me. Come spend some time with me. And let's talk about what's going on with your body. And I'm going to offer you some useful tweaks. I might not, do a full body work session on you, but I might just be like, okay, like, let's just get some like diagnosis of what's happening here. Is this, I don't know what the diagnosis thing would be, but I'd be playing with like, how can I just offer people like an experience where they're like, oh yeah, like that, my elbow, like, that is helpful. And like, okay, we're like, and then I'm just like, yeah, we're just going to do that to your entire body. And this is what we're looking at, I'd want to be offering people that, like, it's not just like, hey, I want to come for a massage. And I'm like, sweet, see you tomorrow. Like, It'd be more like we're crafting a journey that this is where are you going? A massage feels good for a day, a few days. But what if we're talking about transforming your life? Let's hold it in the context of that.
Right.
And if we're looking at that context, like, okay, like let's talk about what that would really be.
And
you can always back off. Yeah, you could always be like, okay, they only want to do a session. Okay, we'll just do a session.
There it is. Boom. Yeah.
Why not hold it within that grander context and see what happens for people? Yeah.
I talk about it in terms of a functional offer versus a transformational offer. Functional offer is, hey, you can pay me, and for 60 minutes, you can lie down on my massage table and I'll push your muscles. And transformational offer is, hey, let's totally unlock your life energy potential because of the way that your spine alignment is, it's like something that's going to have a lasting impact versus just offering the kind of nuts and bolts, like even if it's the exact same offer, right? Even if we're saying, hey, here's 5 massages, it's less valuable for the person. Like nobody actually cares that they're getting 5 hours of time on the phone with Nick. Like they care about they're going to have better relationships, better careers, better, like this, that, and the other, right? Like all the, I guess just to say that, they care about their shift more than your time invested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I so resonate with all of that, Matt. And I think there is something really different that happens when you invite people into a context like that. And I think it can be daunting. I remember being daunted by that when I was like, I'm holding a life-changing context. Can I do that? Am I allowed to? Can I promise that? Is that unethical of me to say, we're going to change your life? And I don't say that normally, there are contexts where I might say that, but,
do people ask you for like proof or referral? Are there, not referrals, but like testimonials, are people saying, because I find this in the marketing world, right? Is like, hey, here's an ad package. Here's what this looks like. And they're like, great. We're going to need to see, previous clients, previous websites you built. People are kind of really have a due diligence process, especially in the corporate world. Mm-hmm. I wonder what that's like for you. You're offering a high ticket, big transformation. Are people just kind of intuitively sensing that you're capable of that?
Yeah, I do think, it can be different in the corporate world, but whenever I'm working, like if I'm just talking one-to-one with a human, that's not somebody vetting like a program that I'm doing for an organization or something. If I'm talking one-to-one with a human, it's so rare that anybody asks for that. It's like obscenely rare. And the reason, so all people care about is, can you help me? That's what they really want. And when there are sometimes people will ask me like, what is your background? Yeah, they'll ask something like that. And when they ask that, I will tell them what my trainings and certifications are. And just for folks here on this call, I did a bachelor's in psychology. Like if I'm just like listing the actual, I could do it in 2 different ways if that's helpful. So the simple answer would be like, oh, I did my bachelor's in psychology, and I was a court mediator for a while. I was a yoga teacher, and then I did an ICF certified coach training. And I've also worked with some coaching mentors. That's my background. And hearing that, it's just like, that's a bunch of words. Like I feel a deflation when I say that, because I'm like, it doesn't encapsulate. So when people ask me that question, what I will say is, what originally got me into this work started when I was 18. And I knew in my bones that there was more magic and intimacy and possibility in this world than I saw. And it was a really gray, dark time. And I spent a lot of my 20s running to the ends of the earth. I went to Nepal and India. I lived with wolves. I trained sled dogs. I ran a permaculture farm. I was just hungry. Like, where is this magic? And I would find tastes and pieces of it. Yet I just didn't know. I could never, it never lasted. And also, like a side note for people listening, I will tailor this to the person I'm talking to. Like, I'll just feel into like what they're dealing with, and I'll speak a bit to like how my experience might resonate for them. Yeah. And so if I were talking to a coach right now and like enrolling a coach, it would be I would share that background. It'd be like, I was looking from place to place to place, and I knew I wanted deep purpose and passion. You know, like because I know coaches really tend to value purpose and passion. You know, I was like, where is that thread? I just kept bouncing from thing to thing to thing. And honestly, what was actually going on for me was I was putting off the thing that I was afraid to do, which is coaching. I did a bachelor's in psychology. I've done ICF certified coach training. I was a court mediator. I was a yoga teacher. You know, like I've like danced in these realms. Yet the most important part of that journey was me ultimately deciding this is the one thing I'm going to do. And just deciding that I was going to leave it all on the field for that. And since I've made that decision, everything's been different.
Whew, I just so much would rather work with the guy who went and lived with wolves than the bachelor in psychology. You know, there's just so much more power in that story. So much more like, I get to be a part of your lineage as I work with you. You know, your larger life trajectory of this like really heartfelt mission.
Yeah, it is so much more fun to say. Yeah, 100%. And I think I want to acknowledge is like everybody listening has that story in some way, like because of what you've been through and where you're going, you can find something that's like, this was tough. And this is the magic that I'm like discovering, creating, leaning into. Yeah.
Yeah. The power of personal experience.
Yeah. And story.
Nick, you've shared so much about, just this really unique perspective and just heading towards landing the ship here. So people are listening to this, they're inspired, they're hearing something they haven't heard before. What are your offers? How can people not only get in touch with you, but like what's really on the table here? What's the new opportunity that you're offering to our listeners?
Yeah, so I think it's probably the thing to say, like, check out my socials, but I don't have any. So honestly, the thing that I would say is, let's put my email down. I don't know if that's a weird thing these days, or we can put my homing pigeon address. Let's put my email. And if folks, if something sparks with you about this, just reach out to me and say hi. Tell me what's going on.
I love
and this
that.
Is like prosperous coach. I'm happy to, you have a slot on my calendar. You've listened all the way through this. You have some time on my calendar. Come talk to me and let's see what magic we can create. And I that is a gift with no strings, right? Like these are the things. There's no strings. You can just, let's have a powerful conversation. Another thing that would be relevant, is a good friend, mutual friend of ours, Kevin Lawrence, and we're creating these, we're calling them the un-prosperous coach, I don't know, salon or something. There's gatherings for folks who want to learn how to do this. And I think we may play with putting those virtually as well. So that might be a possibility. I don't fully know about that yet, but I think the simplest answer would be just reach out to me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nick Shrewsbury, for just coming in with a totally fresh perspective. Yeah, I think we were all kind of, so inundated with the hustle approach to life. You know, gotta have the social media, gotta have the Facebook, the website, Insta, all of that. And it's a breath of fresh air to just really see, not only hear the concept, but really see your success in it. It gives such a validation, right? And earlier we're talking a bit about qualifications, and I love the quote that says your qualifications are your results, end of story. Yeah. It's not so much about the plaque on your wall or the degree or the training. It's have you actually accomplished something? And just seeing that this methodology, this way of being, this kind of apprenticeship model mixed with all the other goodies that you shared today has just really leveraged a powerful way of life for you. So cool to have you on. Just, really epic, inspiring conversation.
So glad to be on, Matt. Can I leave people with a thing?
Please.
Okay. I think there's two things I want to leave this, like the context of this conversation. The first one is, let's have fun. Like let's support each other and let's have fun. More of that. And the second is event action. If something in this sparks for you, pick one thing you will do now, listening to this, that you're like, there's one thing I'm going to do. If that's connecting, if that's, I'm going to check out one of the resources on this thing, just do one of those things. Just one step at a time. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you so much, Nick.